Welcome back to the Shingo podcast. Today's conversation centers around leadership style. We're looking at how your approach to leadership impacts your team, your systems, and your organization's culture. We'll be exploring this through the lens of the Shingo model, which teaches that ideal results require ideal behaviors, and that ideal behaviors are shaped by your systems. Our guest is Alisha Garrett, Chief Enterprise Strategy Officer at the Utah Transit Authority. She's a Shingo Rising Star and someone who spent years using principles, not just tools, to lead meaningful change. She's here to help us explore this topic and effectively talk about how these strategies can be executed. Alisha, welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here. So as you mentioned, I work for the Utah Transit Authority. I originally started with them as a business and quality analyst for one of our largest bus divisions. And from there, within the first couple of weeks, I was involved in a lean champion team that was starting up. And a few years later, I became our continuous improvement manager, where we really wanted to formalize bringing continuous improvement and culture work throughout the organization. And then I had the opportunity to lead the culture and talent development team. So really focused on standing up leadership development programs and blending that in with our culture model that we developed for the organization. And in the last few years, I've had the amazing opportunity to sit at the executive table as an enterprise strategy officer. And I'm still learning every day what that actually means.
Alisha is also a great tour host. Oh. Wonderful. I've had opportunity to visit your facility. It's pretty exciting. I think you've been a great partner for the Shingo Institute. We always appreciate that. And a recent Shingo alumni.
Yes.
Just this week.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that.
Alumni, Rising Star.
I know.
Great partnership.
I know. Very humbling, right? Very humbling. So, to start this off, relative to this topic, tell us a little bit about your leadership style. How did you kind of discover it? What are some of the things that you would say are characteristic traits of your style?
I think that it's a blend. You know, there's all sorts of different fancy terms for different types of leadership styles. At the heart of mine, I think it's authentic leadership. I am who I am. I show up the same way at home, at work, at the grocery store, right? And it's really knowing what drives me, what fuels me, and how I can bring that forward for my team members. So I think the easiest way to describe it for folks that maybe don't always know is it's a blend of servant leadership probably and situational leadership. So I feel like what's most important as a leader for your team is to know what your team needs. So there may be an instance where I'm the visionary and I'm, forging forward for us and we're bringing everyone together. There may be another situation where my job is truly to be the cheerleader on the sideline and let the team take it and be there to fuel their momentum and to support their success. But it's not about me at all, right? And so I once had a leader who was a wonderful mentor of mine, and he described that true leadership is knowing how to be a chameleon and serving where you need to serve, supporting where you need to support, and leading where you need to lead. And I've really done my best to try and amplify that in the different ways that I do work with teams at UTA.
Wow, that's awesome. I love hearing how you kind of see that melding of different styles to really create an optimal style that becomes you. Tell me a little bit about how leadership style in your maybe experience can actually help you or hurt you in helping your organization.
Have you ever heard of negative learning?
Tell me about it.
We've all probably had that one leader or that one person that we've watched and you think, I never want to do that to an employee, right? Okay. So I've had that great opportunity at different organizations to work for individuals where I think that is the opposite of engaging or empowering, or, it's very hard for me to want to give my best to someone that I don't feel like has my best interest at heart, or I don't know why I'm working so hard, right? So I definitely groomed some of my leadership style through that negative learning of the leader I didn't want to be, but I also had amazing leaders that saw talent in me that I didn't know existed. One of those was at UTA. When I first came on, I was an analyst, and I was good with numbers and I was really good in spreadsheets, and they put me on this working group because I knew continuous improvement and I could bring the data into it, right? And pretty soon they're asking me to be a facilitator. And I said, me? You want me to stand in front of a group? This is a terrible idea. It's really hard to tell people in high positions that this is a terrible idea, but it was a terrible idea. And fast forward now, It's one of my favorite things to teach and to engage with groups. I always still get nervous when I'm talking, but I also had a great leader give me a tip that said, you'll always have some level of nervousness, so channel that energy into delivering it to your groups. So maybe that's why I bring a lot of energy to meetings. I'm just nervous. Right? But I really think being able to tap into the talent of your team members and your employees, that's where true success is. Igniting that little flame, and then it just burns brighter. And the more that they catch on, they just start to self-fuel, and the motivation and momentum grows.
You talked a lot about mentorship. You talked a lot about fueling excitement in teams to be motivated and engaged. How do you connect, or how have you worked to build systems to help to drive that kind of engagement? Systems that would reflect so many of those values you talked about, that other leaders can actually do a lot of what you're doing.
Well, we're still new on our systems journey, but I can speak to what we've put in place in the last couple of years. And then we, of course, have those informal systems that are the Frankensteins that have been created, right, that we need to continue to redesign. But I think one of them that's really important, we started several years ago, was a recognition system. And we had done a lot of studies. We had brought great local experts together. O.C. Tanner was one of them that came to the table, and we said, what do you do to help create engagement, recognition amongst your workforce? And so we started bringing forward a recognition tool, and it was a two-pronged approach. One thing in, having an engaged workforce is having employees feel like they're valued by their leader, right? That their efforts are recognized. So that's really important. But one of the secret sauces that we didn't know the power of was the peer-to-peer recognition. And having someone that doesn't oversee your performance report talk about, you were so helpful today, and the true value that you bring to me every day as a peer and as a team member. And that peer-to-peer recognition has really grown across the agency, and it's been fun to watch that take off.
Tell me a little bit about the routines, and we talked about systems, but the routines that you've incorporated into your own personal, approach to leading your organization. What routines do you have, and how do those routines help you in your leadership?
I think one of the routines is actually tied to another one of our systems, which is strategy deployment. So making sure that we have a systematic and systemic approach for how we're going to take strategy forward as an organization. We developed an agency strategic plan in partnership with our board of trustees, but then we needed to get it out to 3,000 employees. And the way to do that is to make sure that you have a way to deploy that strategy at the team level so that it's meaningful, it's relevant, they feel connected to it, they know how that they contribute to achieving those goals, which aligns up to helping the organization achieve our mission statement, which is we move you. And really finding as many possibilities. So I think that's one of the tools we also use, is finding ways for our employees to connect to our mission, finding ways for our employees to connect to our customers, because then it makes our work far more meaningful. So strategy deployment is one of those. A tool we use for that is a strategic one-pager, and it's the way that we align our strategic priorities with our annual goals and our strategic initiatives. So it's our way of operationalizing our strategic plan. And we're only a couple of years into that, but we're really excited about the benefit of that. And the very first year that we did it, the most impactful part of it was just having the conversation with our teams. Previous to that, everybody inherited the same goals. They were board level goals or executive level goals, but it didn't matter what your position was, right? Everybody had the same goal. And now we're saying, here's the goal, and how do you connect to it? So you might have the exact same goal. Or we may translate it to something that's more meaningful, or that goal just might not make as much sense in your house. So we're going to talk about, well, what's that spirit of that strategic priority? What are we really trying to accomplish there? And find something in your work that makes sense. And then you get to translate it. So you can cascade it, you can drop it down, or you can say, this is something that needs to be translated to make sense for our team. And being able to engage in the conversation with the teams was so insightful. And it was harder than we thought, because we'd never thought about our work that independently, but in a connected and aligned way. So we're getting better at that each year.
That's awesome. When you talked about strategy deployment and kind of this cascade, it sounds like your system, as it's still kind of evolving and maturing, is designed not just to get the information out. There was a lot of behaviors you talked about in there that were aligned to some of the Shingo principles. Talk about some of the behaviors you're hoping that you're going to see as this strategy system is rolled out, and the effort that managers are having as they engage with people on it.
I think one of the first things is the body language you see in the conversation, right? It's not this anymore.
Oh, very cool.
Right? Like, tell me why I should care about that goal. It's more, well, you know what I think we should work on this year, right? Some of that behavior shift is really about having your employees and yourself as a leader show up differently. There's a lot more listening versus talking, which is very hard for some of us that are passionate on multiple topics, right? To just stop talking. I have to remind myself of that sometimes. But then the engagement, the ideas that start to come forward, when people start building off of one another's thoughts, you're really starting to spur that co-creation. And that's really, really powerful. And it feels good as a team when you get into that groove of conversation, and also being able to have people raise their hand and challenge on a healthy nature. I had one of my directors last year and they said, I don't think we spent enough time celebrating our accomplishments. I think we were so focused on doing the work, we forgot to celebrate what it took to get there. So we all made a commitment to double down on that this year,
that again.
right?
Yeah, I love it.
We will celebrate more. And it was a really great point for him to be able to bring up and say, we say recognition is important, and I don't think we celebrate it enough. Bringing fun into it, different ways of engaging with your team members. You know, some of the other behaviors I think about as we're standing around our strategy boards and doing our daily huddles, do people show up on time or do they lag in, right? Do people come prepared and ready to have conversation? One of the things that we start with at the very beginning of our huddle are shout outs. And so do people have them filled out in their hand, ready to share? And it's really fun to see that, because then the facilitator, which we rotate, whoever's leading that conversation for the week will say, who has shout outs? And people, I do, right? And it's really easy for the facilitator just to go around the room, and whoever's got a paper in their hand needs an opportunity to share.
You've done some great things, and I love the connections you talked about your systems to not just delivering certain things like number of ideas or shout outs, but actually how they are happening and the behaviors they drive and the way in which they're kind of driving those type of behaviors. So one of the challenges with leaders, especially really strong leaders in organizations, is balancing humility in their work and being able to balance that ability to have influence and be able to really push when needed to, but then also be able to show humility when required. How do you balance that? And what are some of, especially in a high stakes organization like UTA?
Yeah, it's a really fair question. And I think it's something I'm still practicing. Many of us get promoted and moved into roles because we're problem solvers, right? And we're able to be those firefighters. As we're shifting with this culture work and we're really trying to drive critical thinking and problem solving to every single employee, that means that I'm not the only problem solver, right? Which means the success is everybody else's. So you have to redefine what success looks like for you as a leader. And it's no longer your success, it's your team's success. So I think that that's a really big one. And then reminding yourself that taking off the hero cape is the biggest move you can make, right?
Yeah, that's great.
So
that's great.
No more flying around.
That's great advice. So if someone wants to lead with more intention, starting tomorrow, and take their hero cape off and they're inspired by what we're talking about, where do they begin?
I think they have to get curious about their people. How well do you know your people? What drives them? What's important to them? And if you don't know that, start there. But once you know that, your one-on-ones can be different. I have a general rule of thumb with all of my one-on-ones with my team members, which is it's your time. So I will always let them know I've got one thing for you, or I've got, I need this much of your one-on-one time. Some of them use it for brainstorming. Some of them use it to tell me how their weekend went. And it's all about family and friends, or maybe it's about a struggle that they're going through. but they get to use that time for what they need for them to continue to be successful. And then we have our development conversations and what they're focused on for their progress and goals separately, but their one-on-ones are their time. And so if you have an opportunity to really get curious and learn about your team members, what's important to them, what challenges they're going through, then you as a leader can bring different things to them. That's where you get to be that chameleon and figure out, what role do I need to play? Right? And how can I be most effective to them? Or what resources can I provide to them? Because that's not something in my wheelhouse. I don't have something to offer them. And you have to be able to know, I got nothing for you. And so here's how I'm going to help you
Back
instead.
to that authenticity, right? If I don't got it, I'm not going to fake it.
Fake it till you make it doesn't always work in leadership. And your team members know. So I think that that's really important. And then just start small. You know, I talk about what are those little, I love chocolate personally, Peter.
Oh,
I love chocolate.
I'm with you, I'm in.
So you're not going to eat a king size candy bar at once, but you can have those little snack size and those little Snickers minis. So just find what's that little mini moment that I'm going to change today. Maybe it's, this was something that happened to me. I tend to have a lot of meetings in a day. And, you know, it's not uncommon in a 9-hour day for me to have anywhere from 9 to 13 meetings, which means I'm not around my team very much, right? So for me, getting intentional looked like carving out time or blocking places where they knew they could find me. So right after our huddle, we've carved out time on my calendar that nobody else can book so that I'm available. They know if they have something, they can come and find me. But then also on my way to a meeting here, or if I have to go use the restroom, I'm going to take a different path in the building so I can see different team members and at least say hi or acknowledge them in the hallway, right? Find just small opportunities to make those personal connections and check in. And it doesn't always have to take more time.
Wonderful advice. Alisha, thank you so much. It's been wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you so very much.
And please subscribe to the Shingo podcast. Take care.